All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Ali, CEO and co-founder of Node, the leading digital customer experience platform for chemicals. Our goal with the series, as you know, is to share the perspectives you need to navigate the digital landscape in our industry. We have a pretty special guest today. For many of our guests, I usually give an introduction and talk about their backgrounds, but in this case, I don't know that an introduction is necessary. Everyone knows Jeff Immelt, 35 years at GE, named one of the world's best CEOs by Barron's 3 times, Financial Times Man of the Year in 2003, and many, many more honors. Jeff, it's great to see you. How are you?
Great to see you as well. Great to see you and great to be with your audience.
Awesome. Look, I'm here in New York City. I think you're in South Carolina right now. Before we get started, how's life in South Carolina?
Oh gosh, so I'm still busy, right? When I retired, I wanted to keep working. So I'm still very active and work hard, but I pick only the things I want to work on, and I live only the places I want to live. And those two things are quite liberating. So this is it's kind of a dreary day today, and we've had cold and rain, but all in all, this is a nice place to be.
It's a beautiful place. I love it down there. Okay, I'm pumped to have this discussion with you. If you don't mind, I want to start by rewinding the clock a little bit.
Great.
And talk a little bit about how you initially got into the industry. It wasn't GE. You started at P&G. And I think you went there right after school. How did you decide on P&G, and then how did you get to GE?
Yeah. So when I graduated from college in 1978, I was kind of out of money. I thought I might, my original intent was to get a master's in engineering. I ran out of money. I needed a job for a couple of years. That's what led me to P&G. Then I went to business school, and right out of business school, I joined GE. And I'd say on both endeavors, Ali, people of this generation were simplistic. I was simplistic. Like, I wanted to learn to be a manager. I thought the way to learn to be a manager was by working in a company that taught management. I wanted to kind of stay on a path that would teach me technology, globalization, things like that. And I figured I'd go to work for GE for like 4 or 5 years and then figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I teach now second-year students at Stanford Business School. Their life is complicated. They've got 1,000 thoughts in their head. For me, if somebody said, "Look, go to Toledo and work in Toledo," I'd say, "Hey, cool. I'll go in this division or that division." I wasn't that deep, really. I wanted to work hard. I wanted to learn a lot, but my needs were pretty basic, and so you wake up one day and it's 20, 25, 30, 35 years, and you've just grown and learned and all that stuff. And so in some ways I got lucky, but back in the day, I just wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to be a good manager.
I don't know if this is true or not. I just read it online. Did you share a cubicle with Steve Ballmer at Procter?
Yeah. So Steve and I, our desks touched each other, and we were on the Duncan Hines cake mix, kind of brand. And so Steve and I have been friends for 40 plus years, and have stayed, our lives have intersected. We've stayed in touch, and it's just kind of one of those quirks of fate. I tell my students, Ali, here's what I say. Like, I say, look, you're going to meet a lot of people in your journey. Originally, be nice to everybody, because you never know when one of them turns out to be Steve Ballmer or Jamie Dimon or something like that. So, you collect friends over the years, you put in the time, and the network you build is actually quite important. As you know, right now, trying to build a company,
Yeah,
network
I mean,
means
in business school, they don't spend enough time talking about that. Like the connections are so important, and like
I
get to
agree.
know everyone in your class and the other class.
Yeah, I agree. And look, everybody has their days on top, and everybody has their days on the bottom. And like when Jamie went through times when, he wasn't always Jamie Dimon. Sometimes he was in the crosshairs, like we all have been. you want to be the first person that calls on that day. You want to be the person who calls when somebody's going through a tough time, and that's how you build the kind of relationships that last decades.
Yep. Let's keep marching down memory lane a little bit. Before you were CEO, before you led appliances and healthcare, you led GE Plastics.
Right.
I think a lot of the top managers at GE at the time did a rotation through plastics, and yours was in the 80s, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you know more about this than I do, but I think plastics was still a newish material. There's a lot of innovation happening at the time. What was it like leading plastics back in the day?
Yeah, so if you go back to the early 80s, the plastics business was inside GE anyhow. It was innovative. It was really the only global business in those days. So you had innovation, you had globalization, you had lots of talent. And so if you go back, and at that period of time, it was so much fun. I mean, like an incredible learning experience. And all of us kind of rotated around and did different jobs at different times. And, Ali, I was like in Detroit when we did the Ford Taurus, right? Taurus and Sable. It was 72 pounds of plastic in each vehicle. It was game changing. Like Welch would send all the analysts, stock analysts to Detroit, for presentations and stuff like that. And it was fantastic. And the other thing I would say is, because of the company, working for a good company and a good business, we just attracted a lot of talent, right? And so at what I was like, let's say, mid-level manager, and within, maybe a 20-foot walk from where my office was, I had Joe Harlan, who ended up being a vice chairman of Dow. I had Tom Skutak, who was CFO at Amazon for 15 years. And I had Joe Hogan, who was CEO of ABB and now CEO of Invisalign. You know, these guys were like, I could throw a paper wad and hit any one of them on the head, which I would do from time to time, right? And so we had that kind of talent that over the course of time has just spun out and done incredibly well. And that, again, I probably thought about leaving GE two or three times in my career, but what kept me there was the quality of people I was working with. It's just hard to replace.
Yeah, there's a whole tree of people that came out of that group that
That,
now lead
that's
a
tremendous.
lot of different chemical companies. I mean,
Yeah.
they had this perception of being really smart and aggressive. I mean, they took the fight to the competition. From what I've read, it was a pretty aggressive group.
Yeah, no, it was kind of like a work hard, play hard culture because we weren't backward integrated into feedstock, right? We had to kind of create all our value on the front end of the business. So that meant putting a tremendous amount of investment in application development and a tremendous amount of investment in selling. And so I'm not sure, that was part of the culture for sure, but it was also necessity. We weren't really, we didn't really make benzene. We purchased benzene. We purchased acrylonitrile. We weren't like the deep, deep, deep chemical companies the way Bayer or Dow or BASF were. So we had to win using our kind of marketing muscle more than anything else.
Weren't you guys the inventors of Lexan?
What's that?
Weren't you guys the inventors of
Yeah,
Lexan?
yeah. So one of the great stories was kind of like the kind of the development of polycarbonate came out of making wire coating for the transformer business. So that's really why the business was in Pittsfield, Mass, was because it was originally developed as a kind of a sub-tier supplier to the transformer business, which was also in Pittsfield. So over the course of 10 or 15 or 20 years, that was all replaced. And then Naril was kind of polyphenylene oxide was kind of developed in the GE labs. PBT was more, kind of, I would say, commercial product and things like that. So it's a combination of innovation but mainly the business in its heyday was really about market development more than anything else.
I may be completely making this up, but didn't, when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, wasn't he wearing equipment made of Lexan?
Yeah. So Lexan had this tremendous uh like public perception, almost like Kleenex or something like that. And it was known as a clear, super hard material with high, heat distortion temperature. And so it had all of these, I would say, high end, not a lot of volume, but dramatic profile of applications coming back from the 1960s. So yeah, no, it was a fantastic product.
Okay, so this thing that I host is mostly about digital. So if you don't mind, I'm going to shift topics a little bit. I think you were one of the first people in the industrial world to really push on digital transformation.
Yep.
I remember reading articles. I mean, I went to business school and I had to read all the, Harvard articles and stuff. And you talked a lot about wanting to build these capabilities in house. You added a lot of people to GE with that domain experience. You really pushed on data and digital. You wanted to create new business models. And I remember you mentioning that, every industrial company is in the information business, whether they like it or not. And, I can't speak for the broader industrial world. I mean, I don't know it well enough, but I can tell you that in the chemical world, we're still, after many years later, still kind of in the early stages of transformation. I mean, you have history in our space. I mean, plastics and all that. I mean, does it surprise you that we're still in the early stages?
Yeah, so I would say just in general, Ali. So, what led me on the path was, GE and let's say from 2010 on, most of our earnings were from our installed base of kind of high tech, highly engineered products. And the replacement value of these products was like $2 trillion. And increasingly, the way to make these assets perform better was by knowing the data, knowing usage data, failure data, all that stuff. So that's kind of what led me on the journey, was really what would benefit customers, what would generate more profit. And in those days, there was really no industrial software company. I mean, Microsoft was enterprise, Amazon was consumer. So we kind of started de novo what we were trying to do. So that's just a little history. Now, I've been in venture since 2018, and what I would say is the penetration of the digital context in the industrial world is still pitifully small, not just in the chemical industry, but in really every industry. And so if you look at the big companies, Google and Amazon, it's retailing, it's search, it's media. But other than statements of record like CRM or ERPs or stuff like that, industrial companies stink by and large, right? And so I kind of look at that and say, this is all ahead of us, right? In other words, it's not that it won't impact the way industrial companies do business. It's just that we're not there yet. And so it's complicated. Industrial companies, if your book gets late, if your book arrives late, you're not going to sue Amazon, right? It's okay, right? If you blow up a chemical plant, people care. So you've got a risk profile, you've got more complexity, you've got a bunch of things that stand in the way. Nonetheless, I kind of see it increasingly that more and more and more and more the differentiated companies are going to have more digital and data context, right? And so I just think it's a matter of when and not if.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I get asked by, investors all the time, like, why has digital not hit this industry harder? I mean, it's such a massive space. It's needed. Why has it not happened? And
Yeah.
my short answer is always that the venture folks don't understand the industrial space probably as well as they should, and so it's kind of hard to understand what a good idea versus a bad idea is. But then, just as importantly, the folks in the industry, they don't take that risk to sort of upend their life and go pursue something that they know or they believe in and go like start from scratch and build it.
Yeah, yeah. So take two angles on this. One is how to think about digital transformation in an industry like chemicals, right? Because I now invest in companies or I give advice. I see lots of CEOs of big chemical companies in Silicon Valley when I'm there, right? So I always tell people like pick a few easy things, right? So what would be an easy thing? You know, why couldn't you do a color match in 30 minutes with AI, right? Why couldn't you take things that used to take hours or days? Why can't those be done instantaneously? I view that as an easy thing. Take on important things, like I would say kind of what you're working on, right? How you go to market effectively, how you go to market efficiently, you know, so take on one or two easy things, take on one or two important things, and then hang out with people that can bring you scale. Because in the end, you need lots of activity to give you the cost or the perspective or the insight you need. So that's those three pieces of advice are typically things I give, you know, any industrial company, aviation, transportation, you know, that's coming through. Do something easy, do something important, hang around with people that can bring you scale. Those three things. Now, the industry itself, look, I have a 40-year perspective on the chemical industry, and I watch things. I have friends all over the place. I think about it. I would say, and I say this with no judgment at all, right? This is just, I'm kind of being a historian. It's been an industry that's been inundated with financial engineering, right?
Yeah.
There's been 200 plus transactions. You know, companies have split, they've come together, they've spun, they've gone private, they've gone public. And so the lever for any CEO, the easiest lever to always pull has been the capital markets lever, right? Buy something, sell something,
Yeah.
split something up. And, you know, maybe that's been value creating. It's hard for me to see, you know, knowing all the companies versus just staying on a path of organic investment, of innovation, of development. You know, fundamentally in the industry, there's been five pivots, right? There's been metal replacement, there's been ag chemicals, there's been going to China, there's been feedstock integration, and now there's electromaterials for batteries, right? So 40 years, 250 transactions, five pivots. So if you put yourself back in the Wayback Machine, go back 40 years, and if all you did was just follow those five pivots, keep investing, my hunch is you'd make more money. You over 40 years, you would have made more money than all the shit we gave to investment bankers over the years, right? So you're fighting a little bit of I'd say intellectual laziness in some capacities in terms of wanting to dig in and truly, you know, innovate on things like go to market.
Jeff, what gave you the confidence like 20 years ago, whenever that was, you know, from the top to say, look, you know, digital is the future. Your peers weren't doing it. They weren't talking about it. And really invest the way that you did.
So, you know, I, again, I was too early in many ways, Ali, right? So I was too early, but I have this profound philosophy that markets rule, right?
Yeah.
I have a profound philosophy that if you go out and do the things that your customers need before they know they need it and do it well, you're going to win, right?
Yep.
You're going to win. And this was just a part of that. Now, look, if Microsoft had come in and said, look, I'm willing to model aircraft engine data and do it in a way that gives you proprietary advantage, I would have done it with Microsoft, you know? Like, in other words, I had no like delusions about how easy it was going to be, but I wanted to be able to dominate the market, and that's always been, you know, the philosophy I had. Look, in 2008, during the financial crisis, my FP&A manager and I decided to invest another $1 billion making aircraft engines for the next generation of flight. I almost got fired at that moment. Now we sit in 2023, let's say last year. and the GE aircraft engines team wins 90% market share in the Dubai Air Show, right? Why? Because in 2010, we sucked it up and we made a bet on the future of the business, right? So I think it's one of those things where now, like